Okay, so this is the second part of the text analysis component of the class. And we've already done the intro text analysis here, but the second part, I'm going to do something a little different. I had one project where we were looking at music lyrics and doing text analysis of the lyrics, and the other one was looking at the tweets like we've done before, but doing more of an in-depth text analysis of tweets. And I couldn't decide which one to focus on, and I liked them both, so I ended up keeping them, and then you get to decide which one you do. You can either do the music lyrics or the Twitter. And yeah, I should say that if you look at both of these videos for the lyrics and the tweets here, there's probably going to be a lot of repetition because it's pretty much the same analysis I'm doing for both of these, but just different data sets. So let's go ahead and do the lyrics one first. And this uses it's a website called Genius, and you can see this Genius R. Let's go ahead and load that package and all the rest of them. This is an API for this Genius website that has music lyrics. And I thought I'd show you this. You can just go to genius.com, and if you want to get the lyrics, separately, uh, let's go ahead and take this very first one. Is this the Oscars were just last night, and as I'm making this video, and so I think they played this song in the Oscars. And so so if you want to look up the lyrics of a song, and actually you can even do the I think it gives you a sample, 30 seconds of the song from Apple Music, but you can get the lyrics there. But there's a bunch of other stuff. There's comments and pictures and videos and all kinds of stuff here. So when we use the Genius R API, it'll just bring only the lyrics, and it'll bring them directly into R, where we can do the text analysis. So you will need to get, and I describe here a little bit and give you some of the links, so you'll need to get an access token and stuff like we did for the Twitter API, although I think it's a little less complex. But once you get that going, I've already done that, so I don't think I'll need to do that here. Let me just try. Oh, okay, it is asking me. So what will happen is when you run this, let me go ahead and stop this. I thought it would work without me having to do it, but you'll need to go through here and create your API and give it a name, and it'll ask you for a website of the API, and I think I just gave it genius.com, which is, the website itself, as if it was, my personal website, I guess, and that seemed to work. And then you'll have to call this, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out a part of this video so I don't put my passwords and stuff up on YouTube. But if you hit Command and then click this, it'll take me to that site. I can get my access token, and then what'll happen is when I run this, here's how you do this. It's gonna see how it has like a clock there, like it's waiting. If you click, I think there's a couple ways to do it. You can either go show console. Anyway, I think there's a menu command to show the console that I'm not finding right now, or you can just click one of these and it'll show you, it says please enter your client access token. So what I'll do is I'll go over to that website, copy my password basically, and then paste it into the console here, press return, and then close it up again. So I'm going to go do that, and I'll cut that part of the video out. Okay, so now I'm back, and I'm going to try this again. It's kind of funny because it actually looks like it did give me the information. Maybe, yeah. So when you run this, when you get that token, it'll appear down here, and I exited out so I wouldn't show it. But once you do that, it should run this stuff for you. So this search song is one of the commands from the Genius R API, and I'll show you one way that'll give you some insight into how this Genius R API works. I'll show you one way to get basically all the lyrics off of a single album. And I'm an old guy, so I picked this Bob Dylan, this famous song "Like a Rolling Stone," and but you can put in here whatever song. In this case, I'm looking for a song, and I want to get this album, so I thought I'd pick a song that I know is on that album, and did the search song, and you can see what it'll do. The reason you have to do that is because there's a bunch of songs that might have similar names, like Jeff Beck and these other things. But it's what I have found is if it's a pretty common song, it's usually the first one. So it would be the song ID 54784, and every song and every album has a number associated with it, an ID. And just, you might just want to make sure it's the right one. Bob Dylan, Like a Rolling Stone lyrics. You can actually copy, and if you wanted to go look at the lyrics on the website, you can do that. You can, the artist ID, make sure that that's Bob Dylan. And I'm just kind of scrolling through with, yeah, there's Bob Dylan. And so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take this 54784, and I just copied it. And then what I'm going to do in the next step here is I'm going to take that song ID number, and I'm going to paste it into here where it says get song meta, which stands for metadata. So it'll get more information about that song. And this is another Genius API command. And here's the song, that 54784, Like a Rolling Stone. You can get there's the lyrics, the URL to it again. You can get there's some image. You can actually get album art and stuff like that. Here it has the release date. But what I'm looking for here is, it even tells you how many people have looked at that page. 165,000. But what I'm looking for here is there's the album ID. What I want to do is, it's this famous Bob Dylan album called Highway 61 Revisited, and I wanted to get that. And so it's 13573 here, and I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to put that into this next parenthesis. So what I'm going to do this time is, there's a command called scrape track list, and it will get all of the tracks, so all of the songs on this album, in addition to the Like a Rolling Stone song, it'll get all the other ones. And I'm going to, so again, this 13573 is the album ID number for that particular album that I'm interested in, and it's going to take all the tracks and put it into an object called Highway Tracks. The album is called Highway 61 Revisited. And then, so there's the songs on the album, and you can just kind of make sure, check to make sure that that's correct. Then what I'm going to do, this is the key one where we get the lyrics. And so I've got this, this object called Highway Tracks, and now I need to go one at a time basically and take each song on this album and get all of the lyrics to it. And so I use this mapdf, which is, it's actually not it's not a Genius R command, it's like a tidyverse command, and what it does is it repeatedly will apply this command, scrape lyrics, to this to all of the rows in this in all the tracks here. So in other words, each of these, it'll scrape the lyrics and get each one of those, and then put it into a new object called Highway Lyrics. So when you're doing your own, you would just rename, instead of Highway Lyrics, call it whatever the album is that you're getting, and you would, have different numbers in here depending on what the album ID is for that particular album that, that you want to do when you do the second half of this. So let's make sure we do this. And it should appear up here. Yeah, so let's go ahead and take a look at it. Let's get the Highway Tracks and Highway Lyrics. So these are all, it should be all of the lyrics from that entire album. So if you know that song, Like a Rolling Stone, Once Upon a Time You Dressed So Fine, etc., etc. And it has the song name, that's all the Like a Rolling Stone lyrics, and then there's the next song starting here, Tombstone Blues, etc. Okay, Now, just like we did in the intro to text analysis, we're going to use this unnest tokens, and what that will do is it'll, right now you got multiple words per line, so it'll take these words and like the O is capitalized in once, and it'll make everything lowercase. It'll separate. It'll get rid of the quotations and commas and stuff. Although I think it leaves the apostrophes, but it'll get rid of most of the punctuation there, question mark here, and separate it so it's all on, each word is on one line. And so there you see once upon a time, etc., with one word per line, and you see that the O in once is now lowercase there. So that's what that unnest tokens does. And we put it into a new object called highway words to distinguish it from the lyric. So now we've just got one word per line. And so it says to get a sense of the common words on the album, pipe highway words into a word count, and we called it word, and I'm going to sort them. By the way, when I have the cursor in here, I'm hitting Command and then Return, and then that's executing the whole chunk there, or at least the whole. I don't know if it's a whole chunk or just the lines that I'm, so like even if I have the cursor here, it'll execute both of these lines. So it's Command Return. And so there you see you've got the is the most common word, so that's not very interesting, and you and. And so most of these, as you remember from the previous assignment, are stop words. Most of these are not very interesting words. Although let's see if we go a little further. Yeah, they're all pretty boring words here. There's a good one, desolation. It's not a stop word in Queen. But you can see there are 1,000 rows, so that means that there are about 1,000 unique words in this album. And if we go back up and look at this one, you see there were 3,000. So that means there were about 3,000 words total, and about 1,000 unique ones. And these are unique ones because you notice that the word "the" is only appearing once on our list, but it appears 170 times in the album. So that takes the repetitions out of it. So we can get rid of the stop words, remember, with this anti-join command, where joining would be putting the two sets of data together. This we're pulling one set of data out from the other, and we're going to pull the stop words out. And I'm going to kind of do a little bit of a shortcut. I think before we did get stop words and then put that into a new object called stop words, I think, and then use that. But we'll kind of just skip that step and just do the anti-join with this get stop words command, and that'll do the same thing. And then when we run that, you can notice all of those words like the and you and are gone, and now we're left with all the words that are not stop words. And notice it goes down to 887 rather than the 1,000 up here. So it got rid of about 10 to 15% of the words, of the distinct words, I should say. Okay, and then it says we're going to create a word cloud of the album, and what we'll do is it says copy paste the above code. So we've already got these all counted and everything, so I'm just going to reuse that. And oops, I created the chunk again, so let's just delete that. And it says we're going to pipe that into, it says to use the top 200 words, so top N and then 200, and then word cloud 2, and I think it comes out too big, so I made it half size. See if that works. Okay, so that's a word cloud of this Highway 61 Revisited album with all of the stop words removed. Okay, now so that's actually mostly review. Now this is going to be new. This sentiment analysis is a text analysis technique where we look at words that have some emotion or opinion or sentiment associated with it. And in order to do that, we use a dictionary of these sentiment or emotion words. And so one of them is called Bing, and this get sentiments is a command in the tidytext package. And if we pull those in into an object called Bing and then display it, you can see it has a whole bunch of words here, and they're all coded as having a positive or negative sentiment. So like accurate is considered to be a positive word, and accursed is a negative word, and accused is negative. And we can kind of just go through achievable as positive. So they came up with almost 7,000 words that have either a positive or a negative connotation to them. And obviously there's a ton of words like the or something that don't have a positive or a negative connotation to them, but that would be left out of this dictionary. So but they someone tried to come up with this very complete list of as many words as they could come up with that have a positive or negative sentiment to them. And then what we do is we use this join command, this inner join, to find the words in our lyrics here that also appear in Bing. And so we're going to look for the emotion words in our lyrics, and then I just have them being counted here. And so you can see, like there's that desolation, that's the kind of the top, negative word in the album, appeared 10 times. And it doesn't always, I want to say it doesn't always work, because I think, the word well might mean like you're feeling well, and so it's a positive word, but it's also kind of used as an interjection, like you say, oh, well, let me think. And so it's kind of used, it doesn't have really a positive connotation in that sense. And the same thing with like. People will say, it's kind of like, it's like this, it's like that, instead of meaning, I like you. I like you would be a positive sentiment, but like as just an interjection word would not be. And so sometimes I kind of question whether some of the words that come up on the list really are, like good and desolation are clearly, positive and negative. But so you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt, I think, sometimes when you see some of those words. But what we can do, so it says take the above code and copy it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a graph of the positive and negative words that are appearing in this table to make it a little easier to read. So I just take that generated the table. Make sure you, when you paste it in, you put the pipe in to connect it to the rest of it. And basically, I won't go into the details here, but pretty much it's creating. There's our ggplot, and it's creating a bar chart basically by sentiment, and there's the title of it, and there's the changes the color and some of the stuff that we've seen before. And so let's execute that. And there you can see there's that desolation was the top negative word. It appeared 10 times, and there are those positive words well and like, and they occur more often, 20 times, but again, I'd be a little skeptical of some of these, like well and like, but certainly great and right, hero, positive words. It's funny that joke is a negative word, but clearly pain and death and desolation and die are negative. So it gives you a little sense of, you can do this where you might compare one album to another and which one is more, you could imagine some albums are very depressing, and have a lot of negative words, and some albums are really pop and kind of upbeat, and they might have more, positive lyrics in them. And we can even do a word cloud for each of the sentiments here, and I just did this just to show you another way of kind of doing the same thing as above, but this time with a word cloud. So that's that word desolation is so long that it really sticks out there. But that's the negative, all the negative words in the album. You can see pain and lost and death and die. And then here are the positive ones. If you kind of click on these, you can see the different things that it did. And so there are the positive ones: good and well and like and great, and angel. And I also wanted to show you that Bing is one of the sentiment dictionaries that you can use. There's this other one called NRC, and so if we get that with this get sentiments command, but put NRC instead of Bing in there, the key difference with this one, there's a bunch of these different sentiment dictionaries. First of all, you see there's a lot more words, so now there's almost 14,000, whereas I think the other one had, was it 8,000? The other thing is that you notice that it's not just positive and negative. Now it's got it's got positive and negative, but it also has some kind of subsets. Like subsets of positive would be trust, and subsets of negative would be like fear and anger and sadness. And in fact, it says here, so what we can do to see what all the different sentiments are, oops, what am I doing here? Is you can take this NRC, which we just created, and pipe that into a command distinct and then sentiment. And that'll show us all of the different, each of the, oh, what did I do here? It'll show us each of the distinct sentiments, and you can see there's 10 of them. And so it's got negative and it's got positive, but it's also got, joy and disgust and fear, etc. So it's just another way of looking at sentiments. And basically, what it says here is do the same analysis with the tables and graphs of words that contribute to each sentiment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back up here and just copy what we did. Here's the table. So I'm going to copy this and then come back down to here and paste that in. But now the only change here is instead of being, everything else should work, but I'll change it to NRC. And so that'll give us the table. And so there you see fear and you can see that some of the words appear multiple times. In fact, that might be why that had a lot more words in it, because it might appear, each word might appear every time it's in a different category. So we got 13,000. That might be why it was a larger number. You can see good appears in several different categories. And so what we can do is I'm going to copy this graph here, this long graph, but I'm going to look at the NRC words instead. Let's see, where am I? Here we go. So let's put it here. And I want to show you, so it says hint, when you create the graph, try a smaller value in top n. And I just want to show you why I want to do that. I won't do that at first. Now it's top 10. And I think, oh, I forgot to change this. So I need to change it, instead of being, I want it to be NRC. So I'm just copying it above, and the only change is NRC rather than being. And let's run that again. And so you see how you can't really see this? Well, the problem, it wants to get the top 10, but first of all, the little graphs are smaller because there's more emotions here, But also, I think this is more than 10, and they're all overlapping and it looks terrible. And so what I think we want to do is, and the reason that happens is because whenever there's a tie, it'll just, like, even if there's, it's supposed to be limited to 10, if somewhere before it gets to 10 there's a whole bunch of ties, it'll list all the words. So that might be 100 for all I know in there. And so it says to try 3 or 5, and I think I tried this before. So if we try, and so it's changing right in here where it says top n, and let's change it to 4, which is kind of in between there. Oh yeah, see, even that didn't work. See, look, that's all messed up. So I'm probably going to have to try. It worked for some of them, but a couple of these are messed up. So I think I'm going to try 3 instead. I think that worked. Yeah, see, that looks a lot cleaner. So the nice thing is there aren't that many ties. There's some ties here, but it stopped at 2. I think the problem is if we get into 1, then there might be, 30 words or something that only appear once, and so it'll just include all of them. So so this will show you, in anger. See, this is interesting because a row, or do you say row? It's kind of an archaic word for like a fight. Whereas I think that's not what that means in the album. I think they're using it more like a row, I think it's the name of a street or something. I can't remember. But stone and death certainly are anger. There's that row again. It's interesting. Positive and joy are the same. Good and food and God, which is kind of odd. But surprise, thrill, sun. Some of these are kind of weird. I don't know. I'm a little skeptical of some of these dictionaries sometimes. But anyway, you get the idea of how you would do this. I think if you're doing a fuller analysis, you might go in here and look at the word row and see how it appears on the album. And then you can edit, you can kind of define your own dictionaries or remove those using a filter command, so it doesn't appear in anger if it doesn't seem to fit correctly. Okay, all right, so that's some sentiment analysis. Now the other topic I wanted to cover in this notebook are the use of bigrams. And so in the past when we've used this, you might have wondered why it was called unnest tokens instead of unnest words, because that's what we've been doing before. And one of the reasons is that the token doesn't have to be a word. It could be a word pair. Or something even larger. It could be 10 words if you're looking more like at sentences. And so that's what I wanted to do here, is show you how we can look at word pairs that are called bigrams. And so if we start with the lyrics again, the text line is called line, or the text column I should say is called line. And then we want to create a new column of bigrams. And to do that, we define the token as n-gram. And then the n is 2. So if we wanted, I guess, trigrams or sets of 3 words or 4 words, we would change that number in there. And so if we do that, notice what it does. So it doesn't. So the lyrics are you walk into the room with your pencil in your hand. It doesn't say you walk and then into the and then room with. Notice it includes the second word of the first line is the same as the first word of the second line. And so you get this repetition because it wants to have every possible pair of words that appear together. And so I say once you're satisfied, we're going to make a new data frame of these words called highway bigrams. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. It is working for us. So I'm going to put it down here, and I wanted to show you something else. I kind of talk about what in the past we've used this arrow, like we might have done it like this: highway bigrams, and then this arrow. And by the way, you can get that arrow if you missed this before with Option or Alt, and then the dash key on the keyboard is a shortcut for creating that arrow. But I just wanted to show you there's another way to do this. Which is to go the other direction. I don't know if there's a shortcut for this, so I'm just typing the dash and then the greater than sign. And instead of putting it at the beginning, which is confusing sometimes to people, you can do the command here, and then it results in putting it into this new object called highway bigrams. And it doesn't work if you do that. Or even if you pipe it into that, I'll just make sure, yeah, that doesn't work. And in fact, it doesn't even work. It won't work if you do it. I don't think it even works if you do this. Oh, maybe that did work. Highway words, tracks. Okay, so that did. So you actually can put it on a separate line. It looks like, but the way I've always done it is to just to put it on the same line like that. And so now there's kind of debates in computer science about whether it's better to have this assignment operator. They call it, going first, the object that you're creating first, and then the command afterwards, or if you have the command first and then the new result at the end. So I just thought I'd show you that as a different way to do it. And so if we go in and look at those highway bigrams, you can see it's just a data set that contains, all, instead of now one word, it's now 2 words. Okay, so it says we're going to count the bigrams, so we're going to, oops, I keep on doing that. We're going to start with highway bigrams, and then we're going to pipe that into this count command that we've used a lot. And now remember, instead of word, we called it bigram. and then we'll do sort equals true, and that'll give us a sense of the most common bigrams. And again, you can see it's going to be the stop words are going to be common in the and the, And so we can do the same thing where we get rid of those stop words. It's a little trickier here, and this is the command sequence to do it. What you have to do, so now you have these bigrams, right? Of the, and what we have to do is, so it's going to separate them. So the separator is the space here. So it's looking for the space, and it's separating everything into either word 1 or word 2. It'll call it temporarily word 1 and word 2. Then it'll check to see if word 1 is a stop word, and then the next line checks to see if word 2 is a stop word. And if either of those is true, it'll remove that bigram. And then it unites them again, so it's kind of the opposite of the separate, and put them back in, and put that separator again in between them. So I used the Tidytext book to show, I think it was where I got this, to show me how to do this. But there you can see, if there's an in or a the or an and or a stop word like that in there, it will remove it. And now, you can see it's down to 300 rows instead of, so it was about 2,500 bigrams before, so it really got rid of a lot of them. And again, it's because if either of the two words was a stop word, it will remove that entire bigram. Okay, so now it says pipe the above code into, let's see, let's just go ahead and copy this. And it says pipe it into our count command again. So I'm just going to put the pipe in there and then count. And then remember, it needs to be bigram. And then sort equals true. And this will give us a sense of the most common bigrams. So Desolation Row, that's one of the songs. Queen Jane is a song on the album that repeats that lyric over and over again. And so you can, if you're not familiar with the album, these might not look familiar. But if you do it on an album that I think you'll see words that, lyrics that are repeated a lot. You'll see will come out at the top in this command. And then it says create a word cloud of the bigram. So I'm going to take this whole thing here, which is removing the stop words, creating the bigrams, and then counting them. And then I'm going to paste it on top of here and make sure to put the pipe command in there to connect the lines. And then the filter is n is greater than 1, so it's going to take all the bigrams that appear more than once and then create a word cloud of them. And so you can see there's that Queen Jane and Desolation Row. Some of these are just song names. Complete Unknown, that's from the Like a Rolling Stone song. There's Rolling Stone itself. So now one of the uses of creating these bigrams is then what we can do is we can create, in this case, a little list of words, and I only have 2 here to keep it simple, but we might take pronouns like I, you, he, she, something like that, and we can see what words tend to follow those 2 words. So maybe a word that would typically follow I would be a verb. I did something, and then you did something, and so we can compare these 2 and see which words tend to follow I and you. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do that separate again. We're going to filter words that are in our list of first words that are either I or you, and then we're going to count those words and see which ones are the most common. So again, this is just one where you can just run the whole chunk there, and then here you can see the most common word that comes after you in the album is the word no, and the most common word after I is go. And so what we can do is, to make that a little easier to read, we can create a graph of it. So just like we did before, we can kind of paste our chunk above this, and that's the code to create kind of the same kind of graph that we did before. You don't really need to copy this. This first word appears, yeah, there it is right there. So I don't really need to repeat that, but just for completeness, I guess I'll keep that in as well. And then make sure you pipe it in to connect, to connect the lines. And then basically, I don't want to go into all the details, but it's kind of tidying up some stuff and then creating the graph of the I and U words. So let's run that. And so there we go. So you can see the most common U words and the most common, it might give some kind of psychological insight into how the person sees themselves. What do they say that they are doing? I do something, and then what are they saying that other people are doing? And it actually looks pretty similar. No is up there, and although in these lyrics it looks like he's saying I go a lot. That's the most common I word, whereas that doesn't appear at all. So he's going somewhere, I guess, a lot, but the other people are not. Whereas, yeah, well, anyway, you get the idea. Now, I thought I'd recommend, I saw this kind of cool analysis was looking at gender differences in, I think it wasn't lyrics, I think it was like movie scripts. And it's kind of where I got the idea to do this analysis, that it was looking at the difference between what authors had he doing versus she doing. And it was kind of interesting to see the differences. What do they have male characters in movies, doing versus female characters in movies? And so we can do the same kind of thing with the lyrics here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this whole big chunk here. And it just basically, it says copy and paste a chunk above, but replace I and you with he and she. So what I'm going to do is just change this to he, and you could have any number of words here. We could actually do he, she, I, you all in the same analysis, but let's just keep it to he and she there. And so that should, when we run that, tell us something about what these, yeah, that's a little weird that it's, I think I'm going to lower this to, let's try 3 and see if that looks a little better. So all I did is change that number in the top N to a different one, and yeah, that looks a little better. And so we can see, I don't know, it looks like Bob Dylan has he talking a lot, saying says and said and could and was, whereas she is not saying as much, but she's kind of negative. She ain't and she don't, whereas that doesn't appear in the he. So anyway, you get the idea. You can kind of see some of the differences that people are writing when you kind of hold the first word constant and see what the second word is in the bigram. I wanted to show you one last thing here. You can, we did bigrams before by setting n to 2, but you can set that to any number. You could set it to 10 or something else. So I thought we could look at forward patterns. And so we're doing, basically going back up, starting with Highway Lyrics, doing our unnest, but this time unnesting it so it's 4 at a time, and then doing our word count to see what the most common sets of 4 words are. And this is actually from this Queen Jane song, and so you can see, I think the lyric is "Won't you come see me, Queen Jane," and it repeats over and over again. So there's "Won't you come see me," and then there's "You come see me," and then "See me, Queen Jane." Or I guess next is "Come see me, Queen," and then "See me, Queen Jane." You get the idea. But that lyric repeats over and over again. It must appear 10 times, in the song, and so there you see that happens most. That's the most common. And I wanted to look at this. I was curious how many times "Like a Rolling Stone" appears in the album, and I think it probably only appears in that one song. And so what you can do is, let's copy this whole chunk here. And then it says, so what you can do is filter on, you can just look for just that one set of 4 words. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pipe that into this filter command, and we do words, and then equal with 2 equal signs, and then in quotes the phrase that we're looking for. Oops, Rolling Stone. And that'll tell us, how many times that appears. And I did this before, and I was actually kind of surprised that it only appears in the album 4 times. I feel like in that song, it's repeated over and over again, but apparently it's only repeated 4 times, and I thought it would have been more than that. But I just wanted to give you a sense that you can set that n to some number other than 2 to look at longer strings of words and phrases. Okay, so basically for the assignment that you do independently, you'll do this same Genius R search, but I just want you to pick an album that you know. And I said that rap albums are really good for this because anything with a lot of lyrics is going to be good. And there's a ton of lyrics, in rap albums. But whatever you want to use, I'll do that in the next video.